It's a rite of passage for podcasters to attend a big podcasting event. So whether you're a speaker at the event or just an attendee, it's the perfect place for you to help make all of podcasting better. Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. Wrapping up the miniseries this week, it's all been about ask not what you can do to make your podcast better, but ask what you can do to make all of podcasting better. And today, I want to focus on events, specifically podcasting events, probably big podcasting events, like Podcast Movement. That is taking place right after I recorded this. I will be attending Podcast Movement in Orlando, but it doesn't really matter what podcast event because there seems like there's one every other weekend now. There are a lot of podcasting events, some really big, some medium-sized, not a few small ones, and I think it's great that you should attend these. I highly recommend people attending a conference. I'm going to give you 2 ways you can use your appearance at this conference, at whatever conference you go to help advance the cause of podcasting. Not just encourage people to do it, that's important, but also encourage better podcasting, if you will. Encourage podcasting made better. This is on my mind for a couple of reasons. Yesterday, I was speaking with a local Phoenician here who said he wasn't going to go to Podcast Movement because he didn't kind of see the value in going to this big conference. And I think I might have convinced him to change his mind. He already has the tickets. He just canceled his flights. So I think I've I think I've convinced him to rebook his flights and attend because these conferences are really helpful. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the 2 things I want you to do. The 2 things I think you can use during your appearance at one of these conferences to help make podcasting better. It's worth revisiting the tenets of advancing podcasting. Many of you have heard me say this several times, and perhaps for the new person watching, I don't understand. What is that all about, Evo? So advancing podcasting has really 3 primary positions. Position number 1 is that we believe that technology should make podcasting better, not just easier, number 1. Number 2, we believe that new models are required to bring in the 70-some-odd% of people who aren't yet listening to podcasts. And the third one is we believe in and respect the inherent choices made by podcast listeners, podcast creators, and podcast enablers. Basically, you do you. Those are the 3 tenets, and I think the tenets number 1 and 2 are worth talking about today. Tenet number 3 is something you should just always hold on to. But specifically, if you have presented, or if you have submitted to present, if you have submitted to present at one of these events, and by the way, you can, and you should, these events require people like you, people like me, to submit topics so that they, the conference organizers, can assemble the best possible lineup. So what I want you to do is, as you are submitting to one of these events, I want you to keep tenet number 1 in mind, and that is the belief that technology should make podcasting better, not just easier. That should be the focus of your talk. Not in general. Do not submit a topic saying, I want to make podcasting better, not just easier. You won't get picked. But that should be the underlying theme of your presentation, if in fact you have one. Because there's going to be a lot of people presenting how to do this, individual tactics, strategies on monetization, all of these things, which is really promoting themselves, promoting their show, promoting that one thing that they do really well. It's a great opportunity for you to say, I have a slightly different bent on this, whatever the topic is, that you want to make it better, not just easier. Keep using those words. Let's make this better, not just easier, when you're up on stage, if in fact you do get selected. The audience will eat this stuff up because they're not usually hearing topics like this. They're there to take copious notes, and they want to know how to. You're going to give them the how-to, but you're going to tailor it. You're going to season it with this message of making podcasting better, not just easier. And in fact, when you start thinking about that, when you put together your pitch to get selected, that really helps. It really helps you. It really helps your show, your session stand apart so you have a greater chance of being selected. So that's number one. If you get a chance to be on stage, when you're presenting, when you're pitching to present, make sure you're pushing forward the idea that we should make technology. Technology will make podcasting better, not just easier. Now, if you're not presenting, I'm not presenting at Podcast Movement, then your message centers around, while you're there, the things you're doing while you're there center around item number 2. And that is believing that new models, that's business models primarily, new models are required to bring in the majority of people who aren't yet listening. Your job as an attendee is to be on the lookout. You are looking for these technologies, these models, these business models, these businesses, these new services that are cropping up that we haven't seen before. More importantly, they're not really catering to us, the podcaster, because when you go to these events, you will see a crazy amount of vendors set up, all of which want to sell you microphones, sell you hosting, sell you additional services to make your show. But what I want you to be on the lookout for are business models by these new vendors and these new companies, or maybe even your fellow podcasters, new models that might actually bring in people who aren't yet listening. A lot of these conventions and conferences are focused on, well, it's inside baseball. You're literally inside of the podcasting movement while you're there. So they get a little inside, and we talk about ways to talk with other podcasters and people who are currently listening. But you should be on the lookout for vendors, for shows, for smart people who are doing things to bring in new people to the podcasting space. That's what you're on the lookout for. And then you can strike up friendships, become connected, do whatever you can to help those business models to fruition. Yeah, a lot of them are going to fail, such as life with anything that we do in business these days. But that's really not up to you. You should be grabbing hold of these ideas and running with them, and then coming back on your program, or coming back to your local audience, or connecting with the people that you talk to at this event, pointing them to this, hey, there's a new model over here. They're doing something totally radically different, and I think it's going to bring in a lot of brand new listeners. You guys should check it out, because we really need to support those vendors, those new shows, those people who are trying to do things differently, because we only have 25% of the population or so. 75% aren't yet listening. So go to these conferences. Spread the message. Spread the ideas and make podcasting better if you're in a position where you are presenting. Talk about how technology can be used to make podcasting better, not just easier. And then when you're just attending, be on the lookout for those technologies, those new business models that are out there. They're going to bring new people in to the podcasting space, and then spread that message. If you're going to be at Podcast Movement, I will be there. I would love to get in touch with you. I would love to meet you for a coffee or for drinks or for a dinner or just to hang out. Get in touch with me. I'm Evo Terra on Twitter. That's probably the best way to reach me. Although if you want to email me, I say the email every week. Sure, evo@podcastlaunch.pro. Get in touch with me. I check my email, nonstop like most people actually do. We'll book a time to sit down. Let's not make it a random chance happening thing. If you really want to meet, sit down and talk, I will give you that time because I'm not presenting. I don't have any agendas, and I want to meet other people who are interested in advancing podcasting. So please, if you're going to be at Podcast Movement 2019 or any event where I'm going to be there, get in touch with me. We'll find a time, 15, 20 minutes, an hour, I don't really care. We'll just talk and see what we can do to make podcasting better. Thanks for enjoying this mini-series. There will be a tiny little episode coming out on Monday that I'm going to kind of tell you what I'm doing during Podcast Movement and what happens for the show. So for those of you who are not attending the show, don't worry. The show's not going away, but I am going to Podcast Movement. So you enjoy your Thursday and then your Friday and then your weekend, and I'll be back on Monday with another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers.